Alright, so here we have the Davinci Resolve Speed Editor. I'm not necessarily going to go through each of the keys in order or in the same section. I'll try to do that as much as possible. I won't go too extensive into what everything does. This way the video is not extremely long, but I will cover mostly what everything does and how you can use this to add clips to your timeline and move the process quickly along. So you'll see our clips on the left hand side. What I'll go ahead and do now is hit source, and this brings up our source tape on the right hand side with our preview window. Right now I have it set to jog, so if I go ahead and scroll my wheel here, we can jog through our footage. And we can adjust the speed. The quicker we do this, the quicker it goes through all our footage. Now, if you want it to go a little bit quicker, we can hit on scroll, and then if I do that now, it scrolls through a lot quicker. The other option we have over here is shuttle. So if I move this to the right, it'll start playing our footage and had it moving pretty quick there. So let me go ahead and move it back in the other direction. So basically what you can do is change the speed at which it plays through the footage. The way you can tell how quick it's playing is next to the loop button underneath the preview window. It will indicate that for you. So right now it looks like it's at 6 times the speed, or 3. Right now it's at 3 times the speed. So I'm going to move it back in the other direction. Right now it looks like it's at half speed. And of course, if we needed to stop it, we could just turn the wheel up to the point where it's back to normal time. We're going to change that back to jog. Now let's say we wanted to put something into the timeline. We like this clip right here in particular. So I'll jog this back a little bit. And maybe right when her hands touch the food there. So let's go ahead and click in. That will be our in point. And then I'll scroll a little bit forward here. I'm going to jog maybe right where she pulls away. I'll hit the out button. And then up here, I will hit append. And what that is append to end. That basically puts it at the end of your timeline. Of course, we didn't have a timeline. This is the first clip, so it just obviously goes and throws that on the timeline. But you'll notice that we can just quickly go through that with all the footage. So let's say right here, we wanted to do this, and then I'll move forward. Maybe when she starts walking away, she looks at us again. We go ahead and we stop right there. I'll hit append, moves it to that part of the timeline. I'll scroll back a little bit here. Of course, I'm using jog, and I probably could use the other option to get it through quickly, but I'm already on this clip here. So let's go ahead and put an out point here. Move back a little bit. Maybe when he gets ready to get up, I'll hit in. Same thing, append. So you'll notice that this way we can just go through all our clips, set the in and out points, and then drop them quickly onto our timeline. Of course, I probably would have done it quicker if I wasn't showing you guys, but you can see how this would really speed up your process. Okay, so I'm going to move from the source up top to the bottom to the timeline. So I'm going to click on timeline, and now we can scroll back on our footage across the bottom. Now, just to be clear, the bottom portion where you can actually see the clips is a zoomed in portion of the timeline. Now, the next thing I want to show you is place on top. So let's go ahead and come back to the source because I want to choose one of those clips. I just wanted to move that to that portion on the timeline as a location where I want it to go. So let's go ahead. I don't think we've added this yet. So let me go ahead and choose some in and out points for this. Let me quickly show you something too. If I click on source, if I double click on source, it will show a different clip, and that's because we have in and out points on a different clip. So I'll hit the escape button over here to get to the previous screen. So that's this button. What I can do now is hit an in point here, and then an out point here. We can double click on source, and that's what we're looking at. That's the clip that we're going to place on the bottom. So now I'll go ahead and hit place on top, and it places the clip on the next line down on our timeline. Now, if I come back to timeline, I'm going to scroll back here a little bit. Now, let's say we didn't like this clip in particular. We changed our mind. We didn't want to use this any longer. We have the option here for ripple delete, and ripple delete does exactly as it says. What it will do is delete that clip and then ripple the timeline back. The way that the cut page works is that it doesn't leave any gaps. So by doing this, it will push everything back and then it will be one continuous timeline. So let me go ahead and click on that, and you'll notice that's exactly what happened. One thing I would also like to point out is that now if you look at the section above, it doesn't cover the entire length, and that's just because there's not that many clips on the timeline. Once it reaches a certain length, no matter how long you go, everything is going to fit. But just because we have these 3 clips and they're not that long, that's why those blue bars aren't reaching off to the right hand side. But let's go ahead and continue to add some more clips here. I'm going to come back to source. We're going to escape out of here so we can see all our clips. I'm going to, let me go ahead and scroll ahead now. All right, we changed our mind again. So now we want to add this back in. So let me go ahead and hit an in point, and then we'll scroll forward and we'll hit an out point, and then append, which will append to the end there. And just so we have more footage to work with, I'm going to do the same thing here. So we're going to hit in, and then let's go ahead and make the out right there. So that and append. Now if I come back to timeline, let's go ahead and scroll back a little bit. Then I'm going to hit jog. What you'll notice is that the nearest edit point has that white arrow that points down. I'll indicate this on the screen so you can see it. Now because we don't have the snapping feature on, that magnet, it will, once I move the wheel, it will move right past it. You'll see what I mean in a second here. So I can continue to scroll the wheel and everything is fine. Now if I turn on snapping, even if I move the wheel, it stops there for just a second, and then it will continue to move. Now this is good if you actually do want to get to an edit point and you want to insert footage on your timeline. So it depends on what you want to do as far as the snapping function goes. Now if I double tap it and hold it, it has a different function. On the side of a lot of these keys, there is an additional function, and this one does this. So let me double click and then scroll, and it adjusts our preview window and our timeline size. And the same thing with this escape function. So let's go ahead and maybe do a place on top. And that placed it on top of all our footage, this particular clip right here. But we changed our mind, we don't want to do that. We double press on this button, and that just undoes our last function. So the next option I'm going to show you is transition. Now, even though we're not on the edit point where that white arrow is, it will still know to put the transition there. So let me show you what I mean. If I press on transition, it will go ahead and place a transition right in that area. Now the default one is cross dissolve. Let's say we didn't want that one in particular. So if I press and hold transition, I can actually scroll through the different options. So let's say I wanted to do dip to color instead. Choose that option, let go, and now that is our transition. Now we do have these options down here. Let's say now that I've changed it to dip to color, let's say we want to change it back to dissolve. So I can go ahead and do that. Now it's back to a dissolve. Let's say we changed our mind and we don't want any transition there. I can hit cut. That gets rid of the dissolve and then makes it a straight cut. Smooth cut, that's not something I'm going to address in this video. Basically, if you're doing an interview setup and the subject isn't moving too much, you can make a hard cut between 2 different clips, but it will make it a smooth transition so it won't be obvious that there was a cut there. There's a certain case for that. Again, I won't cover it in this video, but that's what that transition is about. Now, if we want to make a cut in this timeline, we can go ahead and hit the split button here. And let's say that I didn't want that clip right next to itself. Obviously, I went and cut up the same clip. Let's say I wanted to move that somewhere else. So I can hold down the button for split, which is actually move, and then I'll use the wheel, and now I've moved it to the other side. Again, remember, there are other options. There are secondary options on the side of these buttons. Now this one says audio level. We won't address that right now. We'll come back to that. So the other option is if I double tap, it adds a marker. You can see that right there. If I triple tap, it adds a marker, and it brings up the screen where obviously you have all these options where you can type in exactly what this marker is for, what's going on in the footage, and choose the color. But there's actually an option for that too. So let's go ahead and move this back here. I'm going to escape out of that window. So if I double press and hold on that button, it doesn't have to be that blue marker. So let's say I wanted it to be maybe yellow instead. So I leave it there, I let go, and now we have a yellow marker on our timeline. So we have this footage right here, and let's say we didn't want to sit through this. We wanted to break it up a little bit so that it wasn't just one continuous clip. We have the option for close-up, so I'll click on close-up. And that is the same clip just on top of itself, but punched in a little bit. So let me go ahead and scroll. So right now I'm after that clip, and here's our close-up. Now you'll see here that it's zoomed in on a portion of the footage that's not ideal. If we press down on that option and then scroll the wheel, it's our Y positioning. So we can come in here and we can actually move the location of the footage. There isn't an option to adjust the X position, at least not that I'm aware of. But you can go ahead and do that on the right hand side in the inspector. So let me bring this back over here a little bit. And then we have this stop and play button at the bottom. So let me go ahead and play through this footage. Punches in. And then we're on the other side of that punch in. Now this goes without saying, but just to be clear, when you place anything on top, anything that's at the top on the timeline will obstruct anything beneath it. So if you wanted to do something like that with the punch in, with the close up, it will go above anything else on the timeline. The other option we have up here is Smart Insert. So let me show you what that does. Let me come back to Source. And let's say we wanted to use different footage here. So let me go scroll back. All right, let's go ahead and use that. So I'm going to place an in point here and then an out point here. Let's go ahead and click on Smart Insert. So even though our timeline indicator, the red bar that you see at the bottom there, wasn't at the point where the cut was between those two clips, Davinci Resolve knew that is where the next clip was going to go. Again, based on those white arrows. So we've taken care of these 4 clips up here. We've taken care of most of these here. We've discussed the source and timeline. We've discussed these 3 keys over here. We can talk about the ones in the middle section over here, and then we'll finally discuss the ones in the middle. Okay, and I've made some adjustments to the timeline, and this is just so we can see the changes that we're going to make a lot easier. You'll notice where I have the timeline indicator right over that clip there. So if we choose the trim in, I'm going to press that down and then scroll this back. And that will choose the endpoint of that particular clip. To be clear, the reason it's choosing the endpoint of that particular clip is where those white arrows are up top. If I press and hold trim out and move the wheel, now it's going to change the out point of the previous clip. So let me go ahead and show you that. And if you're using jog, you can really dial in the exact portion of the footage that you want to have that previous clip end at. One thing I will mention about these particular options is that you'll notice in the blue area in the middle section that the length of our timeline is in fact changing. Now this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but if that's something that you want to avoid, it's just something that you want to keep in mind. Now because of the length of these clips, that area is going to fill out. So let's say I wanted to leave it there, I let go, and now that blue area covers the entire length again. If I hold down roll, this will roll the edit point. And again, this is nice because it shows you the clip on either side. You can choose where the trailing clip comes in and the last clip before it stops. Now let me go ahead and do that again. And I just want to point out that this particular one doesn't adjust the length of the timeline. Now it's adjusting a different portion, and this is just because that is where the arrows are pointing. Once again, you don't have to have the timeline indicator over one of the edit points. If it gets close to one, it will show those arrows, so just be aware of where those are. Now let's say I didn't want to roll the edit point. Let's say I wanted to slide the clip. So if I double click and then slide our wheel here and then move our wheel here, now the clip is remaining the same size, the timeline's remaining the same size, But now we get to control where this clip comes in. So we'll see the last part of the clip before it and the first part of the clip that follows it. We have an option here for slip source. So if I press that and roll the wheel, again, this is not adjusting our timeline length or our clip length. And this is just moving the in and out point of the clip that our timeline indicator is over. The other option is to slip the destination. So if I hold that down, it's the one that follows it. So we can see up top where the beginning and end points are, and we can make our decision there. Once again, not adjusting the length of the timeline. One thing I didn't cover over here is if we enter a transition and put that onto our timeline, we have this option here for transition duration. So I can press that down and we can move this to whatever size we want our transition to be. There is an option that says set on the side, and that's just so that you can set the size of the transition, and that will be the one that it uses each time. Another thing I didn't mention is on the side of these two keys up here, Smart Insert and Append, it says clip on the side. What that means is that it will ignore the in and out points and it will just put the entire clip on the timeline. And the way you do that for all of them is a double press. So if you wanted to just put the entire clip on the timeline, double press Smart Insert, double press that. And again, if you wanted to set the length of the transition duration, then you can double press that key there. The one other key that we really didn't discuss that is somewhat self-explanatory before we get into multicam is this full view. So if I go ahead and press this, obviously it brings our screen full view. If I double press, it plays our footage. So this way we can review our timeline. I can hit stop and then I can hit escape to get back to our timeline. Okay, so now I've created a new timeline and I'll quickly show you how to set this up, even though it's not a tutorial on multicam. And then I'll show you how we can use the speed editor to go through these clips. So let me go ahead and come up to this option right here. And this is the sync clips option. And then because all these clips have audio on them, including the audio clip itself, I'm going to choose this option right here, which says audio. So I'll click on that. I'll click on sync. And now it's lined up our clips. Now, just to verify, if we go ahead and we scroll the timeline here, just based on her actions there, it looks like it's lined up pretty well. So let's go ahead and choose Save Sync. So from here, let's go ahead and hit the Sync Bin button up top. Now you'll notice in this case there's actually 13 different clips. There's actually 12 clips and then the audio file. There isn't 13 options here, and as far as I know, there isn't a way to initiate a 13th option. It's still great that they have 9 different camera angles, because on a lot of sets, that's pretty rare that you'll actually have more than 9. To be fair, that's not impossible. I'm just saying, despite the fact that it doesn't include any more than 9, 9 is still a pretty good amount. So let me go ahead and scroll this wheel forward a little bit, and you'll start to see how everything fills in. So let's say I like that camera angle 6. Now we do have an audio track, so I'm going to click on video only because I don't want to hear the camera audio along with the audio that was recorded professionally. So I'm choosing video only, holding down cam 6 and then scrolling the wheel. And we're sort of just painting it on, and it shows us that clip by itself. So let's say maybe when she takes off her jacket, that's all we want from that. Then maybe we like the angle 7 where it has a close-up of her face. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, now she's pretty much turned away there. Let's cut to another band member, maybe a camera 2. I'll press and hold that. All right, she's about to move out of frame. And you can see how we can quickly go through each of these. Number 9, we can head over to the drummer. The whole band on camera 5. Now we have the audio clip down here, so what I'll do is double click on that. It brings up our entire audio. It only has a small portion selected. Let me go ahead and hit Smart Insert. You'll notice that in this case, it's only put that selected portion down on our timeline, but because all these clips are synced up, and because this is our main audio, what I'm going to do is actually go ahead and drag it back to the beginning. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me actually go ahead and mute this. Bring it back to the beginning over here. Now that music seems pretty loud, so let's go ahead and click on audio level once, and we can adjust the waveform at the bottom there. So something like that. Maybe just a little bit smaller. All right, let me unmute the sound. Let me switch back to timeline, and let's watch through our clips.
Till I put you in your place. You can't smile with that frown on your face, but you look so.
One of the buttons that I want to discuss is this live overwrite button right here. You can see that it's off. If I press it once, you'll see that it illuminates with that red LED. If I press it twice on the side of the key there, it says random. So it just inserts a random clip from our timeline at a random length. I'll go ahead and do it again. And it's added that one to our timeline. So let's go ahead and watch through that. And that's nice if you don't want to make the executive decisions and you just want to throw out some random options and see if the system does a good job of putting those clips onto the timeline. So let's watch through that. And it appears in this case it's actually chosen the same clip. But of course, if you don't like one of those, you can highlight that option and go ahead and delete it. And the very last thing I wanted to discuss is that live overwrite option. Now with that selected, it does change the function of each of these. I won't go into that. Again, I don't want to make this video too long. So I'll choose live override. I'll choose cam 2. And if I scroll through the timeline, I can just paint on that particular clip. Same thing. Let's say I wanted to change it to cam 3 instead. Let's do that. Of course, I've neglected to say video only, so it's adding the video there. But you can see, in this case, you can go ahead and go through the clips, choose which one that you want to use, and then paint them on that way without needing to hold those keys down. If you like post-production as much as I clearly do, or color grading, or playing with gear, testing gear out, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I'd love to have you be a part of this community. Thanks for watching the video. Go ahead and give this video a like. If you have any questions, or obviously if you have any comments, go ahead and leave those in the comment section below. And I'll see you in the next video.